when do you think obsession can cross into a negative space? Because there are people that will have gone down the wrong path with obsessive qualities, and I think it's important to reference that positive obsession is positive, but blindly
Yeah,
and stubbornly following a path that is negative through obsession
yeah.
can have downstream, obviously, yeah, negative consequences. So when do you think that turning point is? Do you think it's circumstantial? Do you think it's dependent on the individual? What are the things to look out for to make sure that your obsession is a healthy one?
Yeah, there's two. The first is more like early on. It's like you want to obsess over something that has to do with creation, like an output versus an input.
Yeah.
Right. It's like obsessed with drugs or alcohol. That's purely selfish. It's just for you. Um, you could argue if it's for art, it's different, but regardless, it's you're obsessed with something for you. Netflix, purely selfish versus creation. It's art or it's YouTube or it's fitness, it's running, it's something outside of yourself.
Yep.
That's usually a healthy obsession. But then even that can go too far where it's yeah, I think it comes down to relationships, It's like you have to find where you find joy, and some people will find joy working, nonstop on their thing, 24/7. And then if it hurts your relationships, you just have to decide what you care more about. Do you care more about your obsession or the relationships? I think the right relationships will support your obsession and will not tell you to be unobsessed. And if you are going too far, they'll tell you. They'll tell you that you're hurting them, and then you have to make that choice, which most people will care about the relationships because that lets you do your thing. That lets you keep going. It's hard to do it alone. And it's probably not worth it to do it alone, right? But that's where people, the obsessed artist is like a trope, right? Where it's like these people just become all consumed by their thing and then erupt, and they, often they die young, and it's like you have to watch out for that. I think the relationships are like the sign that you're going too far when people will tell you, because those are the people who usually support you, and they'll tell you when it's not healthy. Because that's really all that matters is relationships, I think.
Agreed. I think inputs via outputs is a great way of measuring it. Very, very simple. But I think do you think there's a risk of people becoming insular and compromising that and not seeing the value of their relationships through committing to something that their friends and family might not understand? Because if you're obsessed amongst those that aren't, then it's easy to feel that that's a fountain not drain sort of analogy. Is are these people fueling my obsession, or are they in the way of it? So how can people make sure that they don't just isolate themselves in pursuit of their goals and therefore compromise on the relationships which we both agree are so valuable to keep you accountable to yourself long term?
Yeah, it's hard. I think it's hard because obsession can feel like a love affair. It can feel like this is like the thing you're in love with, right? So you're gonna choose it over everything else, and that can like blind you, like you're saying, um, make you do things you wouldn't otherwise. So I honestly don't know if I have an answer. Like I'm still figuring out. I think though it's obsession though isn't something you should be. When I talk about it, it's not. I talk about it like a million ways, right? I use it like a noun, a verb, an adjective. It's not something you should be 24/7. You have to go through periods of obsession, whether that's a few months or whether that's a few hours a day, and you come out and you have dinner
Yeah.
with your girlfriend, your wife, whatever. Um, that's what it needs to be looked at. Like I talk about it kind of like the obsessed self. It's like my alter ego, right? Like I do these AI pictures, and like that's literally like me. Like that's what I want to be. And but I'm not always them. And like in person, I'm much more like, I don't know, fun and like happy versus like my writing. You could get a different sense sometimes. And so that's how I view it. It's like go in and come out of that obsession. That's what you should be doing,
So it shouldn't be all consuming, because
No.
it should be something you're in control with, not letting control you. I think the big error I've made in the past with my obsession, and the one that actually caused me the biggest issue with my own depression when I was younger, was I let the plan control me rather than I the plan.
Mm.
And by that I mean that I'd mapped out my life 5 years in the future, and therefore any decision that I was making or day that I was spending that wasn't in pursuit of that future was a day that was failed. But the plan that I created was hypothesized within a different set of circumstances. And the circumstances and environment changed, but I didn't change the plan. So I was then at the mercy of my own obsession, completely stubbornly holding myself accountable to it, even though the plan was no longer, it didn't have the utility that it was designed for. And that ultimately led me down a path of just punishing myself psychologically over and over again, feeling that I was a failure, feeling that I couldn't do anything right, and that I wasn't holding myself accountable to the goals I'd set. So the key thing for me now is that essentially I will still map out the future. I will still hold myself accountable to the goals that I set, but I need to constantly reassess and reevaluate the circumstances in which I'm operating and look at things objectively, because things will change that are out with your control. And actually, the sort of mark of control as an individual is being able to look at those things and therefore navigate through them by controlling the plan rather than letting the plan control you. Because saying, I am going to commit to a marathon in 6 months' time, if you get hit by a bus the following day, and then you spend the next 3 months in a hospital bed punishing yourself that you can't train for a marathon because you said you were going to, that's not a healthy
There are
relationship
people who
with the
still
goal.
do it too.
Yeah.
There are people who will like, screw it, I'm getting to the race.
That's what's crazy as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's I think it's really important to just adapt your obsession to the environment, and that'll make it more sustainable.
Yeah, I like what you said. Like, don't be the puppet master. Don't be like pulled by the strings.
Correct. Yeah.
And I'm going to write about that. That's good, because it's like,
I look forward to reading that because you'll articulate again. That's a much better analogy than my thing. So no, I look forward to reading that.
It's true though. Yeah, that's really, I haven't thought of it that way, but it's true. That's how it could feel when you're obsessed. It's like someone is pulling you.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a good thing in the beginning, but you just can't let it go too far. You can't let it completely.
But it's
you have to stay in control.
It's knowing what lens to look at yourself through to make sure that you can see when things are going to go too far. That's the goal.
That's what's beautiful. I'm about to go through this, I feel like, with the running, and like I feel like running is like not even just marathon, but like all ultras, like what you're doing. It's like it can be a super all consuming and like almost dangerous sport by how hard you push yourself, right? So it's like I'm excited to like feel all those things and deal with all that.